Hello and welcome to a rather cold but rather dry Glawputh depot. You can see we've moved temporarily into the running shed side, which is normally the side occupied by the quarryman locomotive during the summer. We've been quite busy since our last update to you. You can see that quite a lot has disappeared. The cab has been lifted off. That was one of the aims last time. With the idea of coal firing, we've made some mock-up bits out of wood, which is now, as you see from the C2 project and the NG15, the popular way of showing people your designs. So we've mocked that up for coal firing, where we've made like some coal rails and put the cab floor back in the back head cladding, and we're going to make a fire hole door, and that sort of invite fellow loco crew to come along and have a look to see how that goes together and if we can make any improvements that would best suit everybody. But we've also been taking more apart from the engine. Most importantly, so once we've taken the cab off, myself had a meeting with Mr. John Wally and Dylan Ham as to sort of the engineering side of what we should do with the locomotive, other than make it run again, which is quite a broad remit. We sort of spoke about what we could do to it and what we are going to do into the medium term, and the main thinking at the moment is to focus on the boiler. So there's lots of dots, green dots, that are sort of creeping their way up the boiler, which is not a disease, it's ultrasonic testing, sort of the thickness of the plate, and Mr. Wally has asked us to do this so we can have a good idea to see if there's any grooving in the plate work at all on the boiler. And so far, as you'll see from some of the numbers in some of the photos, it's coming up quite good. There's no worrying numbers that would cause concern. It might have to be redone again by an official NDT company, but it gives us an indication that the boiler shouldn't need any major surgery. It'll need a full set of tubes, possibly some tube plates, and we plan to do some other modifications around the other side, like deleting two of the flanges into the boiler, which have never been used, and we'll probably have to add a thickening plate for our intended modifications of how the boiler's held down here, just so if it rubs or whatever design we finalise upon, it won't damage the actual pressure vessel part of the boiler. So yes, we've got about 75% of the tubes out at the moment. We'll see that later. They've come out relatively easily. We've had to cut them in half and cut the ends and grind in the firebox, which is not a pleasant job. Fair play to all the volunteers who have done that. I've had a bit of a go, and many others have spent much longer in there. It's very dirty, but it's completely necessary so we can get this far with the project. So that's where we are with the boiler. Our plan for that in the next 12 months is to get it lifted off the engine, shot blasted, agree a scheme of work, and then when Boston Lodge can fit it in, or we have lots of volunteers or funding, we'll hopefully get that to a stage where it could go for a test, and then after that we'll sort of move on to doing all the big work to the chassis. So talking of the chassis, we've taken quite a lot off now. All the steam pipes have been disconnected from the boiler, so that effectively now is ready to lift off. It's just held down by gravity. We've had a look at the front end. The buffer beam is quite visibly bent from times it's been squished or crushed into things, which are quite well documented. And we're having a sort of look at the moment to see with the front supports that sort of join on to the side of the smoke box, if we'll keep them broadly the same, but see if they can go to a slightly different place, and also this tank support, see if that can actually be held on the loco frames itself rather than the smoke box, just to make it a bit tidier. But we're not going to change anything drastically here. We're just going to make the general idea is that we'll keep the bottom end the same as it is. We'll just make all the bearings good and make sure the cylinder bores and the right sizes and whatever, and are nice and smooth. We've got to take the end covers off in the future working parties to see whether to measure them up and then come up with a scheme of work for those. But everything else, unless it's particularly damaged or bad, we'll just remetal white, sort out everything so it's back to, well, as built in 1982 condition. As I said, we've got the modifications here mocked out of wood for the boiler supports. We're not quite sure how we're going to do that yet. We're sort of erring towards something similar to how the Fairleys are designed, but that's still sort of in the early stages. We're just doing this to see a visual representation of what we could do. And then as we move further back, which is where we're going to do the most major addition of what we want to do is a sort of dogleg shaped bit of frame that will eventually join the rear diaphragm plate here to the rear buffer beam. That's just a way of tidying up all the previous modifications to hold the cab and make it just sort of one unit, and also provide the single leg of the rear frames some additional support at that end, because the frames are over 100 years old, and we'd like, as far as we can see, they're okay, but we'd like to keep protecting them for as long as possible, which is the main idea behind that woodwork there. So when it was originally built, it's built to an American style, so the boiler was actually used as a structural member. It was sat about 3 inches lower down on the original, and it was bolted on the smoke box twice along the barrel, and then front and back of the firebox on things called diaphragm plates, which are basically a thinner plate stood up like that, and then as the boiler got longer, it would get longer from this way, and they would all bend backwards. Now, because it's had a new boiler, it's had a British style way of fixing the boiler at the back end with a sort of sliding joint which clamps onto the top of the frames. Now, the frames weren't necessarily designed for that to happen because they're lightweight. Most American engines are, because it means you can have a much more powerful engine but with lighter frames, and it wouldn't be as heavy on the track. They're quite spindly, and they're quite able to flex because you've not got the same rigidity as plate frames with big frame stretches that go across it. It's all quite a nice girder structure. This is a little bit more flimsy, and the boiler was originally used as part of, it wasn't pulled on like, you know, with the England engine fireboxes. It wasn't pulled on, which is the dangerous thing. It was more just to keep it all rigid, which is why at the front you've got the angled bits, which I spoke about, and then to keep the strength, you attach it to the boiler, but with the flexible joints on the barrel, because that gives you a nice triangle shape, and then 2 sets of squares. And then the idea with the bit at this dogleg at the back is you've got the plate there, which is the rear diaphragm plate, and the rear buffer beam, and you've only got, yes, you've got 2 bits of bar frame going into one, but then you've only got a single relatively thick bit that goes out to the back, and you've got the firebox sitting on top of that. It's not held at either end anymore, as I've just explained. And then you've got the cab, and then you'll have a coal bunker or oil tank weighing down right at that rear end. And that's, if you look at the original drawings, that's more than you would have ever had originally. You just had a single coal bunker and a cab that you get completely soaked through if it rained. So the idea with this is to have easy access to that spring and not really interfere with anything as much as possible, but it just ties that plate there to the rear buffer beam, giving, sort of stiffening it up so not all the weight is dangling on that lower bit of frame. And it also gives a nicer way of securing the front of the cab. We'll put the reverser on there as well, so because the reverser was attached to the boiler, so when it got longer, it changed your valve settings, so we want to eliminate that. And then it also means we can have a slightly lighter side cladding to the firebox, because at the moment they're massive plates. But that's the idea. It just brings those 2 plates together, provides a bit more strength, neatens everything else up, and will just increase the longevity of the engine, really. As I said before, in previous videos, all the cab and the plate work is now off, that is not needed for a long time, so we'll probably either take all that or get in a contractor for shot blasting who will then shot blast it and prime it all, and then there's lots of opportunities there for people to come and put a protective coat of paint on top until such a time that we need to put it back on the engine or need to modify it in such a way. But there's nothing that we're too worried about. We just need to work through it all. We're also going to move the pony truck pivot onto the cross beam for the front of the firebox. So that gives us a lot more room for access to the bottom of the firebox, regardless of whether we put an ash pan in it or not. It just gives you a much bigger envelope to get things in and out of. But yes, we've got everything in store. We've started processing that to give that a nice, get those assessed, ready for work needed doing to them. So once hopefully we get all the big stuff done, like the boiler and the chassis, we can then just put all the fittings back onto the engine in quite short order. And then, as I said, with the cab, that's got lots of wood-aided engineering ideas onto it, and like with these ones, once we've roughed it all out in wood and come up with some proper engineering drawings and finalised any ideas we have with John Wally, we can then start getting bits of metal cut and get those fettled and fitted, hopefully prior to when the chassis disappear, so at least it's all one complete unit for a scheme of work to be done at Boston Lodge. So yes, that's how far we are at the moment. We've also done bits and pieces around Glamorputh. We've still got tools to tidy, and we're working towards getting a new mess facility here. It will be a new container, the same as what we have now, but hopefully a little bit bigger, subject to what we can find, and sort of just improve the facilities here, so it's just a little bit nicer for volunteers when they want to come and help us or work on different projects, or even loco crews and guards when they come up here for their turns. It's all just to keep nice gradual improvements, which should make the site better. So yes, thank you very much for all the support this year and all the help from all the volunteers. We've gone quite far from having the engine just inside the shed in February, March time to where we are now. It's been really good progress. People have been pleasantly surprised with how far we've got in this time. And hopefully in 2024, as I alluded to, we should have some exciting developments sort of progress along the way. So as usual, if you want to get involved, contact me at my usual email, which should appear somewhere. And then we obviously have our website and Facebook page, and then the Society's page if you want to find out what we're doing or donate or ask us any questions or for photos or anything. Because I've had quite a few requests from people for modelling purposes, sort of for pictures of the cab floor and whatnot, which I hope you've got. So yes, until next time, thank you very much.
It's Christmas. Smile! Are you excited? I am.
Merry Christmas!
Good to meet you all on train. Okay. There we go.
Lots of trains.
Oh, hello, hello. Well, hello. Hello. Golf in a minute. And we'll see you later, alligator. In a while, crocodile. Oh!
So this is the new relay room in Waunfawr, which was built when the station building was built. It's a standard signalling 930 series interlocking. It's quite a straightforward one. Normally we'd put these in a small grey cabinet outside, but we've got a room that if we built it indoors, it's better, it's warmer. So it's made up of relays and wires and fuses. These white plastic things here, those are plug boards. You drill them out to take a particular relay, which plugs onto there. It sticks out about this far, and you wire them together to make the logic sequence to control the signals. So there is a plan of what signals we have and where they're going. And then of course you don't want to clear certain signals until other things have happened. For example, you don't want to clear the starting signal unless the token is out. So that's something you can write in logic. If you do IT, it's a series of and or gates, all that kind of stuff. So to make the logic, you wire them together, and eventually something happens, a relay energizes, and then a signal clears. So there's a huge pile of wire around the back with markers on the back of the plug boards. So all of those wires are going to be terminated into the backs of the plug boards soon. And then on the wall here you've got a series of links, and this is where all the cables that go to feed a particular signal or a treadle or something like that come in. And so the power comes in there through the battery charger, goes through the relays and then out to equipment around the site. And that's basically how it works. And this has taken a fair number of man hours to get it to this state, because we try and do it properly. And the thing that takes the longest is putting ducting on walls and putting rails on walls, because you're sort of trying to work it out as you go. And if you do that bit correctly, the actual wiring's been relatively straightforward. So outside we've been doing a lot of work as well. Samuel Knappett and Jay Maxey have been up here quite early in the morning for the last few weeks, working with a local contractor to do all the civil engineering. Keith Jones has done all that work for us. This concrete pad here in this hole is going to be the starting signals for the down direction. So we are at the Carnarvon end of Waunfawr station at the moment, and so you can see there's a concrete base there. We're going to drill some studs into it and put up the signal posts, which are lamp posts we've painted to look more heritage, and there's pipes there so we can get the cables out of the ground and into the lamp post, and then that will go up the signal into the signal head. And if you follow that pipe run back, it runs alongside the railway back into the station building, and then that's where we take the cables in. And so there is a duct route now from the outer limits of the signalling from one end of the station to the other. There's a continuous pipe with various chambers and pipes coming off to the side in order to connect all the equipment together. And if you come back after Christmas, there will actually be a post here, and something more interesting than just a hole surrounded by barriers, but that's what we've been up to.
Right, hello and welcome to the Carnarvon end of Waunfawr. We're standing at what will be the up home signal entering the station. What is currently the fixed distant, which the camera pans slightly, is just over there. So the distant will be moved considerably further down the end of the straight, sort of just a post at the moment. We won't be putting the signals up until after Christmas, so that there's no confusion between the old and the new. So we've got what doesn't seem like very much. It's just a post and the speed restriction signs and a pipe sticking out the ground. But the work that went into building this was extraordinate. There are 3 layers of plastic sleepers built up in a layered fashion, all screwed together in the corners with composite plastic posts. Same material that the plastic sleepers are made out of, and then it's all infilled with ballast and concreted in, so it's very solid. We wouldn't normally do this just for show. We're doing it mostly because there is a humongous bog which is slowly but surely eating away the embankments, hence the large amount of ballast to build up the shoulders. So to make sure that the signal post isn't leaning like the Leaning Tower of Pisa in a few years' time, we've given it a good strong foundation. So turning round now from the home signal, the up home signal, this is the up point indicator repeater. This is a new feature. We haven't had a point indicator repeater before, but the sight lines to the point indicator, which is remaining next to the points under the bridge, is limiting, to say the best. Drivers will be very aware that it's quite late in the game that you can finally see whether there is a white light or not. So to improve the sight lines, we've put another post up here which just repeats whatever indication the actual point indicator gives. But its sight line is considerably better. You can see it before you see most things. In fact, you can see it as well as the home signal as you come down the straight. So it's a minor improvement, but it should help drivers get a better idea of what's going on in the station earlier.